and then there are other groups, Asian, and so I do not have, in most cases, I do not have any other option than indicating that I am African American. And African Americans historically have come through this process, which of slavery.
Mm-hmm.
And so they have an experience that is different from mine. There is no way I can ever be fully African American in that sense. And yet, that identity defines my existence, defines my experiences, defines prejudices, biases, different kinds of attitudes that I encounter in the course of my life and my work.
These biases and these experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Did you experience this as heaviness? Did you experience this as darkness? How did you come across this during your process work?
Okay, so there are two parallel processes I'm going to describe to you. One is that given who I was and where I come from, family support, cultural background and exposure, my orientation was to have an experience that wasn't colored by these identity issues that I was talking about. And so education was one of those things that I went after. Of course, I became highly successful in that, professional life, integration. And so it was like life is good, everything is going well. But as you know, identity goes much deeper than that. And so the other parallel process was I had to go back and pick up and look at who I was as a Black, Nigerian, African, who now lives in America and is American by citizenship. And so that came with all of those dynamics that I talked about, which were not part of my experience. But to be able to move on effectively, I could no longer shut them down. I had to understand how those dynamics were at play in me or what impact they had on me. And that is the process that I'm actually right in the middle of right now.
An image came to me as you were speaking of a plant, and you, with your hands being leaves, are palpating where your stem is actually going into the ground, and you're starting to trace the roots and seeing where they go.
Absolutely. I mean, you are right on, because it's like you can look at this plant and go, wow, this plant looks great. But until you have understood where it has come from, the root structure and the soil into which it was planted, you haven't really begun to fully understand, the full story of the plant itself. So you are right. I love that metaphor.
I'm curious, you discovering that your identity of being a Black African Nigerian, where has that led you? Are you in process of trying to understand, trying to discover more about who you are in the identity?
No, I'm discovering it, and there is more to be discovered. So, for example, in light of the academic professional path that has become, a big part of my identity, I didn't have to worry about that history that I'm talking about. But as I having, tried to understand the root and the soil that you were talking about, I am feeling a lot of things that were not there. So I'm feeling angry at the history and the past that Africa was subjected to. And I'm feeling like the unfairness, and I'm feeling the aftermath, which is that Africa, even in its stages of independence of different countries within it, was already crippled. Crippled by the external controls that came from all those, colonizing influences and powers that you are aware of, from Europe and from North America. And I'm going, no, this is not fair. This is not right. And guess what? That is me too. So I may be living in the US right now, but a big part of my history and reality is rooted in the struggles Africa is going through. the failed democracies, the poverty, the divisions that have been created and made worse. They were tribal structures, so don't get me wrong, before colonization, but those were magnified to the point where it is really difficult to get much accomplished without those becoming, roadblocks. And so there is that reality that lives in me. And so whether I'm living here, whether I am a global citizen, like I define myself to be, a big part of me is still held back and struggling with the list of the oppressed that are still crippled by the systems that has affected them.
Recognizing that and realizing it and going to the point of owning it. Is that where you're going?
Absolutely, because only in owning and integrating all of that can I fully be both at peace with myself and engage the world from that place of self-authority and freedom.
Wow. What you're saying is big.
Yeah. Otherwise, I'll be angry for the rest of my life. See what I mean?
Yeah. Without even knowing why. Without knowing why. Yeah, yep. Without even understanding why.
And I think even most importantly, without people around me understanding why I am. What are you talking about? Why is that such a big deal?
It's over.
They wouldn't understand either. Yes.
You are listening to The Darkness Within with Okokon Udo. We'll be right back after this message.
You are tuned into Slade Suter Live on Authenticity Radio. Visit us on the web, www.authenticityradio.com.
We are back with Okokon Udo, and now we return. So in order to do true conflict resolution, which is a question I want to ask you, why you want to do this work in the first place, you have to take stock and bury yourself like a frog on a table with a scalpel in many people's hands and saying, okay, go ahead, go to work. I want you to.
And I can give you a few examples. If I do not fully understand my own inner struggles and imperfections or darkness, I will not be able to connect with the deep struggles of any individual or groups that I am facilitating. See what I mean? So my level of awareness would be such that I will totally miss where they are coming from, what the issues are, especially the historic nature of most conflicts that whether it is in a family or between nations or groups, there is a history that needs to be unfolded that contributes to what is playing out often in consensus reality. So all roads lead to self-discovery and mastery and deep inner work as a facilitator for you to be effective.
The words forgiveness and understanding of what you are forgiving for would be very hard to forgive somebody for what you don't really understand or what it is that you're forgiving. As being two parties who are in conflict.
Yep.
Now, conflict is nothing new for me. As a matter of fact, they can study me. Go ahead. Lay me across the table, get a scalpel, and just open me up. And you will see that I am, too, a willing participant. Because I have come to the point in my life, Okokon, where I feel, what is there to lose by the discovery of deep process? What is there really to lose? In my eyes, what you have done, there's everything to gain.
I think there is always a for the sake of, and so you're absolutely right. There is a lot to be gained in doing this work. So from a personal perspective, there is a level, I don't want to say state, but a level of internal peace and congruency and fulfillment that one reaches. And from that place, as process work would describes it, there is a role that is always waiting to be filled. In any field that one is engaged in, and it is that of eldership. And that is eldership.
Eldership.
So, it's often that voice of reason, that unifying voice that looks beyond what is cooking right down here, which is people wanting to hurt themselves, people wanting to, kind of separate themselves from the other. That's what happens when there is conflict going on. And the step towards resolution comes when there are people that can see the full picture. And in process work terms, that have the ability to be able to speak from the other side or see what is happening from the other side. Are you getting the point?
Yeah.
So that when nobody is able to see it from that way, all that happens is escalation leading to further escalation. And often when you magnify this to like the global world scene, that is where war breaks out.
It seems like it's almost beyond the voice of reason. It has to meet with the point of deep respect on both parties, and that's what makes eldership or an elder possible.
Yep, absolutely. And what I love about process work terminology, especially its understanding of eldership, is it's not necessarily the oldest person. So in some cultures like mine, the elder was the person, the one with the most experience, the one that is the oldest in the context. Here it is a role. So the voice of reason in a family, for example, could be the child. So see what I mean? So it can shift. And if that is empowered in a group, often somebody can cross the aisle to the other side. So we've talked about self-understanding. We've talked about, the role of eldership, and we've talked about the ability to take the other side. So you're not just taking your own side, but you're also able to take the other side or see the other side. Those they look like little shifts are the things that can help turn things around in a conflict situation.
Now, Okokon, why do this? Why do this at all? Hey, listen, you have a comfortable life. You are an excellent instructor. You are very well educated. You don't have to mess with anything. You don't have to go back and visit your roots. You don't have to own your Nigerian roots. Why do this?
Great question. That is the $1 million question. A €1 million question.
Ooh, euros. Let's go to euros.
Like whichever currency you are using, because I don't want to be like American centric, in talking about this. But it's a big question. Why do I do this? The reason that I do this, as you know, with any other aspect of life, is whatever affects the least among us affects us all. Okay? And if I tell you that because I am in my comfortable home right now, somewhere in Minnesota, that I am shielded from the anxieties or the fears, or the hurt or even the death that is looming in different other countries or communities across the world, I am lying to you. I lay awake at night trying to think through a solution for Syria, for Egypt, for Nigeria, for Greece, for Spain. See where I'm going? Because I, in my global citizenship, feel so connected to the realities in all of these countries and many more, that if I do not do something about it right here at home in one small circle or the other, then I am actually perpetrating the exact scenario that keeps me awake at night. Yes.
Somewhere along the line, the choice comes in. My own internal true voice, listening to that or not listening, Is that where the choice actually begins?
It's a kind of tricky spot.